Have you ever wondered what it takes to successfully raise money? I have worked with hundreds of capital campaigns across dozens of industries, and I'm here to share with you proven methods for raising money in record time and at the lowest cost, while also obtaining capital at the lowest price. My name is Karl Dakin, and welcome to Motivated Money. Hello, this is Karl Dakin, and this is the Motivated Money Podcast. This is where we talk about raising capital for entrepreneurs, nonprofits, community projects. And our goal here is to try to share with you, our listeners, watchers of this episode, another tip, another way of raising capital, something to help you as you go about raising capital. And today I have with me Chase Thornock, who is a recovering venture capitalist. And I say that very carefully. But a lot of times when we go out to raise capital, the biggest failure of an entrepreneur is they're talking to the wrong person. It isn't that the person's bad. It isn't that they're rejecting you as an entrepreneur, that they hate your business or your enterprise. It's not a match. There are certain things you can do with your business, certain capabilities, certain outcomes you can achieve. And if that happens to match with the venture capitalist, then you should be talking to a venture capitalist. If it turns out that you should be better fitted with an angel or with a strategic partner or something like that. And part of the motivated money approach is we're trying to figure out who do you match with best, who has the highest motivation. And that motivation quite commonly will go outside of a return on investment and go to other benefits that someone may derive from the success of your organization. And where we find the highest match is when that outside benefit is actually greater than the ROI. They have a greater reason to help you succeed because they may need you to succeed in their own venture to fulfill their own mission. That point in time, we have a match made in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna make something happen. So with that, Chase, you're a venture capitalist, and that's a rare commodity even in today's world. There aren't that many people who actually sit in a chair as a venture capitalist and put large chunks of money towards brand new innovation. So
Yeah. And I certainly, I'd like to. Yes, I am a recovering venture capitalist, but I also, coming freshly out of school, I wouldn't say that I was necessarily the chair, right? But I was doing a lot of the work to help us find companies and source companies and do all the metrics and kind of figure out exactly what we were going after. But I really appreciate your approach, especially after this. As a VC, you have LPs, limited partners that you're responsible to, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand the life cycle of a VC fund. Typically, it's a 7-year cycle, right? We're raising money for a year to 2 years. Then we have to deploy that money, and that takes time, depending on the size of our fund. And then we have to harvest that money within the life cycle of that fund. And so there's constraints there that often don't fit to an entrepreneur's time frame. As a matter of fact, I've seen VC. And sometimes it's even bad for the VC, right? But I've seen entrepreneurs who have this baby that they want to run the rest of their life, right? And they don't realize there's this ticking time bomb that the VC is ready to get rid of that thing, right? And I love your approach of trying to do a good job of matching up money because it's more than money. We get in there, we see the dollar signs. Someone's interested in me, right? But it's like dating when you were a kid, right? Probably not best to jump off with the first one that's interested, Take some time, date around and figure out who you are and who they are.
Well, and you mentioned every investor has or should have. I won't be very careful there because I will beat up on the angel investors a lot for having no investment criteria. But they have something they have to do. And a big difference between an angel investor and a venture capitalist is they are managing other people's money. They have a fiduciary obligation to do the best they can with that money for the people who put it in their care and trust. Where if you're talking to an angel investor, a wealthy individual, they have the discretion to spend their own money and they can spend it any way they want. They don't have to account to anybody else. And so they have more flexibility on one hand. They don't have a 7-year cycle. Their cycle might be 30 days. It might be 1 year, might be 5 years. but they have completely different mindset when it comes to how they go about doing it. One of the challenges I have with angels is sometimes they try to adopt venture capital on how they go about making investment, and it doesn't work for so many reasons.
Sure, sure. And I like how you said fiduciary responsibility, right? Because that is a legal term. There is a definition to that, which means I have to act in the best interest of my LPs. I do not have to act in the best interest of my entrepreneurs. And a lot of times those incentives get crossed up, right? And if I have to pick one or the other, you got to pick the LPs, right? And I think honestly, what you're doing in helping people make matches is you're trying to align the incentives, right? So if an angel has a fiduciary responsibility to themselves,
right?
Not legally, but they'd be an idiot if they, if they weren't being responsible.
Sorry, I
with
didn't
their
mean to
money.
agree too quickly to that definition.
But I also believe that entrepreneurs, if you don't begin with the end in mind, you can't clearly define the incentive structures, right? So if you're starting a company and this is your baby and you have a mission and you have a goal and you want it to be a cash cow for the rest of your life, venture capital is not for you, right? Even angel money may not be for you, right? But actually going out and identifying strategic partners. And one of the areas I'm sure that you talk about that's interesting is even corporate sponsors, right? Where you've actually raised money from the people you're targeting to sell your business to. Incentives are really aligned in that scenario. You do well, they want you to do well, right? And then they're able to actually even work some CFO magic with the purchase. So everybody comes out in a better situation, right? So I love that approach. Yeah.
Yeah, that takes on more of a strategic relationship. It's more complex. We like to think that if you get the money, you can do whatever you want to with it, and you have a lot of flexibility, which is not true. That's all wrong. But
Yeah.
it is interesting to see the distinction. And one of the things that I would like to note for everybody who's listening is that venture capitalists need to get a great rate of return in order to justify the high level of risk that they're getting into. And one of the challenges entrepreneurs don't fully understand, I encountered this over and over again, is from the investor standpoint, if you tell somebody that you're going to give them a 10% return on their investment, you look like about 100,000 other businesses who are all telling them the same thing. You're a commodity at that point, and you're not going to be making a high enough return on investment to be attractive to a venture capitalist. And venture capitalists have one great, I will call it natural benefit. They can be as picky and choosy as they need to be because they're only going to make a number of investments. They don't have to make hundreds of investments or thousands of investments. They might fill a fund with 4, 5, 10 different investments. And so they can skip over the first 10,000 and pick one out, skip over the next 100,000, pick the second one out. And if you don't happen to have those unique high growth, high return capabilities, then you're not going to match up. And I know as a venture capitalist, in my early days, I sent all kinds of offering memberships, and they all came back rejected. And because I was putting things on the table they couldn't begin to fund, and I certainly wasn't crowd.
Right.
I wasn't going to be the best choice.
Well, and to your point, in some ways, it has to be more risky, right? We think if the deal's less risky, that we have a better chance. But to your point, a VC fully expects 80% of those businesses to either just return the money they put into it or go to zero, right? And then there's 10% of these things that are home runs, right? So they need a 10x return. They need a 50x return potential on those businesses. Otherwise, I can't think about this, right? A VC was 4 people who's managing $2 billion, right? Those are big checks that they're writing, right? They can't spread themselves too thin. Otherwise, there's no value add to their process. So they write those checks to businesses that have home run potential, right? If it doesn't, and you're looking for 10%, I always say your best option probably is family, friends, and fools, right? That's the category that you're probably looking at with that 10% approach. So consider that. And that's not to say that VC can't be a great option. It absolutely can be a good option, but know what you're getting into. Understand what a term sheet is, right? Before you get married to this institution and, you sold everything and haven't known it, right? Make sure your incentives are clear. Make sure you're aligned and work with a professional who knows how to help you find the right kind of money.
Yeah, and it's sad for a lot of businesses to acknowledge or admit that their company, no matter how well they run it, no matter how hard they scale it, it's still not VC potential.
Mm.
Um,
Well, that's where you end up in that situation where they run it really hard, they scale it, and then these VC companies are actually negative. They're not making any money, but they sell for billions of dollars, right? That can drive the average business owner insane.
right. And the thing is that if you understand the potential of your business, you have a choice between giving up all the ownership or a little of the ownership. And if for all the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into your venture, you want to retain as much of that ownership as possible, because that's your reward for everything you've done from an innovation standpoint, from risk taking and so forth. So when you go out to talk to any investor, whether it's an angel VC or whatever, you have to ask yourself, how much am I willing to give up to get the resources that are being offered to me? And you have to understand the trade-off that's taking place. There are some people who are jockeys in starting up businesses, and it's all OPM, other people's money.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they take a big fat salary out of it, and they don't care how much they spend or where they go. And I don't like to work with those people because they don't have respect for the money, which is one of the things you've got to have if you're asking for investment. The others, they don't seem to care for the product either. I often laugh at entrepreneurs who are doing the song dance because they'll get the question from a judging panel. Well, how much do you love this business? Oh, I'm all in. It's all about being so forth. Then the next question is, what's your exit? And they're going, I'll sell no hard.
Yeah, I know, right?
Enough money.
That's not congruent. Yeah.
It's not congruent.
Right.
And I, of course, I'm in the back going, I'm glad that's not one of my clients who say that, because any incongruency in an answer when you're being asked that by somebody with money is a loss of credibility. And it only takes a minor amount of loss of credibility for them to look beyond you to some other investment.
And I think another piece of credibility that's useful for entrepreneurs is if you are going to go pitch a VC company, please do not say in your deck that you have no competition, because either that means that you have a really bad idea or you haven't done your research.
Well, and actually your greatest competition is status quo.
Well, yeah.
And I try to explain, because I do a lot of work with innovation, high-tech startups and so forth. And they go, there's no one out there. I go, that's good and bad news.
Yeah.
Because if there's truly no one else out there, you have to convince the entire world they have to change how they do things.
Exactly.
And there's a whole bunch of people who just prefer to leave things the way they are. And they will all oppose you knowingly, consciously, or unconsciously, because they prefer stability. They don't like disruption. And more disruptive your technology is, the more opposition you're going to have. So
very wise.
All of this, of course, investing, so forth, leads to stress. And I understand that in your experience, was that stress was something that you encountered.
Yes, I was VC, and then I was with a portfolio company of that VC to help turn it around. Really quickly became the CEO of that company. And it seemed like I was on top of the world. I was a young kid and a CEO and, all the stuff, right? I was doing this, I was checking the boxes. But my health was deteriorating unbelievably quick. And it got to the point where I was hospitalized for several months. And it almost killed me several times. And the doctors said, you know what, there's no answers. We're out of answers for you. And that was a really harrowing experience, to go from what was supposedly the top of the world, right, to I'm bedridden. Like I couldn't even walk.
Yeah, everything I would have wished for at the age of 30 years old, you were achieving, and I wasn't. And you're the one who gets
It's
sick.
not as great as it's cracked up to be.
Right.
Let me tell you. Yeah. Yeah. So it was an interesting experience for sure.
So this treats what we call a major divergence away from
Yeah.
talking about capital to, things that are in some ways more important in life, which is your health.
Yeah.
And how you manage your health, and some of the things that you did when you were placed in a position where people were telling you, we don't have a solution for it.
Yeah.
Now, so what did you do at that time?
Yeah. So I remember being in bed, writing my will, basically. I was just preparing to die from this thing. And I had a moment of clarity, and it said something along the lines of, the doctors aren't going to fix you. If you're going to heal, you're going to have to do it yourself. And at first I felt just crushed by that. That was really hard for me to hear because I was not a medical professional, right? I didn't have the skill set to be able to do that, I didn't think. And looking back on it now, it was exactly what I needed, right? Because as disempowering as that felt in the moment, it was very empowering because I knew that the answer lied inside of me, right? And when you talk about a major divergence from capital, yeah, it is. But some of these principles carry through, right? The capital in your business is your resource. It's your lifeline, right? And you decide whether that goes towards marketing or whether it goes to a sales team, or where that money goes is where your resources are being spent. And the same thing was happening in my body, except that my resources were being spent literally attacking my own tissues, right? And so what I learned how to do was how to control that resource allocation system. I learned how to control the budget. And that's called your autonomic nervous system, right? And basically those resources are either divided or entirely spent on surviving now via fight or flight mechanisms, or surviving later via rest and digest. And our bodies are so powerful at switching from one to the other that if you're in fight or flight, you're not digesting. Your reproductive system isn't working. All of that stuff shuts down entirely. And over a long period of time, those organs physically start to break down. They start to get demolished. In addition to that, the stress had led to what's called adrenal fatigue. I'd run out of the normal stress hormones our bodies use, cortisol, adrenaline. Speaking of a budget, I've run out of that resource. And so my body went to its next best option. Okay. In a business, that's probably shark loan debt, but it's expensive, right?
Yes.
In your body, they're called cytokines, and they're like loan sharks. They are hammers and everything's a nail. They're ready to fight, and they go into your body. And when there's nothing for them to fight, no infection, they start attacking you, right? So in learning how to start controlling that system, I learned how to raise more money. I learned how to increase the budget. I also learned how to direct that money appropriately, right? Metaphorically in my body. And that's what allowed my body to then begin to heal itself. And I was able to, and only my body could do it. And so now I have a company called What Magnificence, where we teach executives and entrepreneurs and medical professionals even the techniques that I used to gain control over my health again and how to heal my body.
And I think that opens up, as an entrepreneur and opportunist. When I first heard your story, I'm like, wow, I need to go look at this from about a million different directions.
Well, if you go to my website, go to What Magnificence, put in your email address, you'll get a mini course and you can do it.
Yeah. Well, and it's just that I have worked with a number of different medical products and so forth throughout my career. And every now and then you will see stuff that happens that no one can explain.
Sure.
And you realize that we don't know as much as we sometimes think we know. And doctors are good people, but they often play by the book. They're told to play by the book, and not everybody's in the book.
Right.
And so the fact that you found a way to heal yourself, to manage your own body as a resource, I just find that an incredible story. And I intend to dive into this and learn more. It also, at the same time, I started thinking of all the people I know who are suffering some kind of disease or affliction, and nothing's working.
Mm-hmm.
The meds aren't working. The other things aren't working. And my wife, who works with children with cancer, we regularly see kids who are not responding to therapy. And you always want to reach out for, well, if there's something else that we haven't thought about, we better get busy, do something.
Yeah.
So how can they get a hold of you if they need to talk?
Yeah, go to whatmagnificence.com. You can send me an email at chase@whatmagnificence.com. You can find everything that I offer. And like I said, there on the first page, you can put your email address in, because it's one thing to understand these principles up here, but understanding them here won't do you any good, right? Actually, it's called embodiment, but actually getting these things in your body allows you to then start making the changes that you need to, because as you said, doctors are great people, and they are. And one thing, I'm not a doctor, but one thing that we totally agree on is that the body and the body alone can heal itself. A doctor doesn't, a surgeon doesn't, I don't. Only your body can heal your body, right? And the same is true for everybody on this planet. And as sometimes that can feel daunting, like it did to me, right? But at the same time, it's equally empowering to know that this is inside of you. And if you're able to meet the conditions that your body needs, it absolutely can heal. And then nobody can take that from you. That's yours.
Yeah. So as we wind up this episode of Motivated Money Podcast, I like to hand out homework assignments to everybody who's listening and watching. And this week's homework assignment is I'd like for you to go home. I'd like you to list out all the resources that your business needs to succeed. And I want you to pencil in your body as one of those resources that is absolutely essential to your success. And ask yourself, are we allocating resources to that? Are we treating that with the proper care and respect? Because sometimes as entrepreneurs, we can get a little bit carried away and we get too caught up in I won't say the wrong things, but we may neglect some of the stuff, including ourselves. And it's very important that you take care of yourself, take care of your health. So here's signing off today for the Motivated Money Podcast. I appreciate you being on the program with me, Chase.
Absolutely. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening in to Motivated Money. If you like this or any other episodes, make sure to leave a rating and review of the show. We love to hear your feedback and want to make this the best possible show for you. Also, if you like this episode, make sure you share it with someone you know who is seeking to raise capital. They will appreciate learning what you now know about raising funding. I'll see you on the next episode of Motivated Money.